lower Michael's hand form. There it is. Okay, so without further ado, Mr. Yamamoto, your show.
Oh, thank you, Steve. And I just want to welcome everybody and say hello. I'm David Yamamoto. I'm the chair for the Family Law section of the LA County Bar. And I just wanted to say that our chair-elect, Paula Kane, will be taking the helm on July 1st, thank God. But anyways, I want to welcome everybody to this wonderful program, and thank you for joining us. We hope that all of you, your families and your friends, are doing well and staying safe during this most difficult time, and it's a very strange time. We all need to hang in there. We all need to support each other, and we will get through this. The Family Law section is proud to present this program, which is the second in a series of 3 Zoominars. Last week, we had a program entitled Manage Your Firm and Your Sanity, and that was presented by Pierre Walzer and Chris Melcher. And it was very well received, and it is archived on the LACBA website so that you can see it if you didn't get to see it, or you can revisit it if you want to. But today's program, which is the second in our series of Zoom webinars, is called Effectively Managing Your Family Law Practice in a Work in-Home Environment. And our distinguished presenters are Joseph Spirito, Steve Mandel, and thanks to Allison Spirito and Leslie Abel, we were able to put this thing on. They will be giving you tips on marketing skills and practice shifts because of the COVID-19 issue that has arisen. But before I turn it over to them, I just wanted to make some announcements before I turn it over to them. Next Thursday will be our 3rd Zoom webinar. We don't have a title for it yet, but we know who the participants will be. And there'll be 4 retired judges who will be presenting next week at noon on Thursday, and that will be Thomas Trent Lewis, Robert Schneider, Aviva Bob, and Hank Goldberg. And the moderators will be Abbas Hajian and myself, and we're going to be trying to address some issues as to alternatives to going to court, since basically the courts are shut down for quite a while in the foreseeable future. Also, our 2 signature programs, 2 of them, the Trial Institute has been postponed. We're going to try to reschedule that. I want to thank Linda Sheridan and Paula Kane for doing such a wonderful job on that program. And that was canceled at the very last minute because of COVID-19. And our Family Law Symposium that was set for May 16th is being postponed and is tentatively set for August 1st. And hopefully we'll be able to have that. Erin McGoy, our chair of the Family E-News, will be getting the next edition of the Family Law E-News out by the end of this quarter, and the theme will be what else but COVID-19. Also, I want you to look for the announcements for LA County Bar's networking events that we're putting on. I'm putting one on May 7th, and it's going to be via Zoom, so we're looking forward to that. And now it's time to turn it over to our 2 distinguished attorney panel, Steve Mandel and Joe Spirito. Take it away, you guys.
Hey, so before we get started, I just want to point something out to you, David, that the room is 100% full and people are knocking on the door. So we had this big discussion as to whether or not we're on FMBK's Zoom. If you don't have a Zoom account, they're really dirt cheap. Just go online and get them. You can send me an email or send Leslie Abel in my office an email. And we'll show you how to get on Zoom. But we had a debate as to whether or not we should increase the account to 1,000 people. And I was certain that we were going to be in a sold out position. So when you charge people free, I guess selling out isn't the most complicated thing. Yeah. So I guess at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick us over to my screen share so everybody can see right now. Now we're sharing my screen, my office computer. And we're going to just go ahead and start this presentation right now. So that's how that goes. So hopefully it moves, Joe. There we go. So there's our head logo, and there's Joe and me. Isn't that cute? Don't we look great? So that's actually my bar mitzvah picture. And that's Joe's confirmation picture.
Before Allison started working with me.
There you go. And so now we have the introduction. So I get to take the ball in the beginning here for a few seconds. And one thing that I want to make sure everybody knows, I cannot see your hands. So Leslie and I'm going to pin Joe here. If you don't know how to do that, do that. I cannot see the chats, and I can't see your hands right now. Joe and Leslie, hopefully they can see some of that stuff and they'll be able to identify it. So my big theory is the well-managed teams are not going to just survive this. They're going to thrive and they're going to gain market share. And what do I mean by that? So, you know, even though FMBK is a big firm, we have 20 attorneys and we seem like, we should be the big monsters on the block. You know, the big firms right now are really suffering because we carry a lot more overhead than the smaller firms and we carry a lot more risk. And so the key is to see who can trim down, who can become efficient, who can gain market share. And Joe, that kicks you to the next one.
Sure. Well, not a large firm like Steve's, but we're in Redondo Beach, and there are 8 people primarily doing family law at our firm. And so we're trying to learn how to work with our colleagues and basically change, really create some opportunities. Okay. One, you know, at this particular time, if you're going to try to, you know, expand your horizons, this is the time to do it. CDR is the primary lane that's open right now until the courts are more available. So for those that are interested in that arena, this is really the time. It's almost like rolling back to 2008, 2009, when the courts had were impacted, and they were closing courts. That produced a lot more what we call CDR, consensual dispute resolution work.
So, you know, the bottom line answer to everything is, you know, if it was easy, everybody would be running a law practice. And I'm assuming, I saw a couple people that I know don't own their law practices, but for the most part, all of us own our law practices, or we're so integrated into each of our practices that managing the firms are going to be the most important thing. And as we know, what's the old saying, calm waters make for poor sailors. So that's that we're floating in 20-foot swells right now. So you better be pretty good at it. And work from home is the new normal, but your business still could be pretty good if you know what you're doing, and it could be even in some respects better than ever. So we're going to go, then these are the kind of things that we're going to talk about through this presentation. So Joe, what makes good leaders?
Yeah, so, you know, now that either staff and lawyers or you as a solo practitioner, however way you're operating your law office, you've got to show some leadership skills with your staff, your colleagues, your clients. Okay, you treat, you know, they're obvious things, but trustworthiness is really critical. And you know, you can monitor the work they're doing, but we've got to put faith that the people we've hired and the clients that we have somehow have to be integrated in a way where they know we're helping them, they know we're working, though they don't necessarily come to our office happening. That include our staff and colleagues. As far as
the other thing you got to do is you got to have better internet. Listen to Joe's dinging on the back sides of all that. Those are the slow internet that he's got over there. So make sure you got good internet. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. And then, Steve, who better to talk about confidence than you?
So confidence is a really important thing. You know, you really have to be confident when you're talking to your staff. When you're talking to anybody, whether or not it's your clients or your staff or the courts, you've got to be kind of the rock in the middle of the storm that's not going to float away, right? Because everybody is really relying on good leadership. So when you see Fauci get in front of all of us speaking, that was Leslie had put him as one of the first slides. That was one of probably the most important aspects of his presentations. Is he's very confident, he's very trustworthy, and he's a great leader. I just popped up a book called by David Meister. If you don't know David Meister, he's written a bunch of really good books on managing law practices, one of which is called True Professionalism. I make everybody in our office read it because it talks about how you gain the trust and the confidence of everybody in your law practice. And it goes all the way from the openness of your practice to the way you pay everybody and how your compensation systems work. So Joe, I'll throw back to you respect.
And obviously respect works both ways too, but one of the aspects that I think is critical is boundaries. Because we're working from home, that we can call either our colleagues who we work with, late at night, early in the morning. These are things that, how you operated before, try to operate in this current environment, because that respect is critical to have with a dose of major boundaries for your client and colleagues.
There you go. So what do you do what are we going to do with the given times right now, right? So the very first thing is, Joe, is what?
Regular contacts with your team. Set up Zoom meetings, whether it's an afternoon session. I think Steve, I know you mentioned that you do it twice a day. Have to do that necessarily that much, but certainly regular contact. And if it's not with your team, do it with individuals, talking on the telephone. Find out how they're what else they need to make their job more efficient.
So Joe's right. We do Zoom meetings twice a day, once at 10 o'clock in the morning and once at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We've been fortunate. We haven't had to furlough or lay anybody off. We did have an overall salary reduction program for everybody in the office. Hopefully our PPP money comes in and we can reinstate salaries. But we do, since we're paying everybody, I feel that it's not a problem to have meetings twice a day. So we have a Zoom conference with our 40 people on staff, between the lawyers and the staff, and kind of just bring to everybody's attention what's going on, which is my area to talk about right now, which is transparency. Whenever you have a really critical situation, what we all want is transparency. When we watch the news, we're really upset when the leadership isn't transparent with us, or if we don't believe they're transparent with us. So what do? We all have our cell phones and we Google coronavirus public health, because the public health department is transparent and we believe that they're trustworthy. And that's what leadership is. And that's why a lot of people, if you know a lot about Los Angeles politics, Ron Galperin, who's our city controller, is just very transparent. He has the entire checkbook of the Los Angeles that he controls. That checkbook is online, and you can look to see how much the LA County pays for pens and pencils, if that's what you wanted to do. So to me, transparency is probably one of the most important things, especially if you're asking people to take pay reductions. And Joe?
Yeah. What we used to expect from people, maybe just tone it down a little bit. Be flexible with their schedules. Trust the fact that they're working, going back to respect and leadership. And we just have to morph with what is going on. Flexibility is important. And when you're, listening to what people have to say, that's fine. But at the end of the day, if you're the manager, in order to lead, you've got to be decisive.
There you go. And the last one is stay calm.
Yeah.
Nobody wants Chicken Little running around like this all day long. That's like really awful for the company. You got to be calm, and you've got to be the person that's very strategic. Because I can't see everybody, I assume that a lot of people right now are doing things at home like mindfulness training or yoga. I do kickboxing, I do mindfulness training, and I do yoga. So being calm will allow you to open up your mind, and you'll see things that you didn't see before. And as a leader, you've got to stay calm, but at the same time, you have to be strategic. So I guess the ball is going to get thrown to me with regard to technology for a few seconds. So now in this group, we have 100 people on the program right now. And so out of that 100 people, we have a vast degree of varying levels of knowledge with technology. So we have, the first thing that we have to do is we got to get remote access to our offices, right? Because we need to know, we have things that are in our office and we have things that are at home, and we need to have access to both. So now that, and your teams and staff need to. So what are your basic types of technology way to get remote access? One is to have cloud-based system. So a cloud-based system essentially is your server is hosted by somebody else somewhere in the cloud. And so that means that at any time you can be at the Holiday Inn in Wichita, Kansas, and you can access your entire office's computer system without downloading any software. And cloud-based systems, the data would be the big purple cloud, and then any little computer can access that, and none of the information is stored on the little computers. And it always runs as long as you have internet access and as long as your cloud-based server is up, which most of them are pretty reliable. I'm not so keen on having my data being in Ukraine, but you know, so be it. So that's cloud-based systems. Most of us, at least even our firm, we're a server-based system. And a server-based system means somewhere in a closet in the office is a giant computer. And that giant computer connects to all your little computers, whether or not they're in the office or whether or not they're your cell phone or your laptop or your iPad. And you control that data. And it's more complicated because every individual attorney in your office has to be connected to your server. It has to have the security protocols, everything has to be in place. And so that means that if you have an emergency like we had now, which is on a Thursday, we were told on Friday we couldn't be in the office, unless your office is already set up to be remotely operating and you're server-based, your IT people have to come in and download software on your cell phones and download software on your laptops and download software on your iPads. So that way you can address the server, your server in your office. So what are the big, and then of course we have all the security issues with both cloud-based and server-based. Cloud-based systems tend to be much more secure than server-based because, you know, when sitting in your closet, you're not really spending the money that the cloud-based people are spending on security. So, you know, the last point of this is whatever systems you're using, you should be dual authentication. And so if you don't know what dual authentication is every time you either access your cloud-based software or your server-based system, that you're on your cell phone comes a little message that says, are you, Steve Mandel, accessing the cloud-based server or the server-based system? And then you mark yes, and then you can get access. So to kind of quickly summarize the difference between cloud-based and server-based, it's a matter of preference. I prefer personally to be server-based. It's a little bit more complicated because each individual attorney has to download software in order to access their data. But at the end of the day, when you have a lot of employees and you have a lot of devices, it can be a little less expensive. Depends on your own internal IT guys. For us, most people would think that we have IT on staff, and we actually don't have IT on staff. We actually have tried to avoid that because I prefer to work with an outside company, because when it's 2 o'clock in the morning and our server goes down, if I had staff, then I would be calling them and waking them up, and I would feel guilty about that. But with having outside services, you pick up the phone, you call them, they aren't complaining because they're getting paid, and they're very happy to assist you. So if anybody has any questions about the difference between cloud-based and server-based, Joe and I will hold the window open till 1:30. And if you send us some chats on that stuff, Leslie and Allison will keep track of those chats, and we can talk a little bit about the difference. Right now, it's getting to be pretty much a push and a pull between cloud-based and server-based systems. I suspect over time, the cloud-based systems will overtake everything. Especially, by the way, if you have digital dictation, your digital dictation devices, which run on software which are located on your computers, those days are going to be gone pretty soon because there's only 2 or 3 companies that are controlling all the software. and they want to get paid a monthly fee. So they're all going to cloud-based systems, and your IT guys are going to tell you that your digital dictation devices pretty soon are not going to be able to work with your server-based systems. More money. I guess, Joe, I get to keep the ball for a few seconds more, right? With the technology stuff. So make sure that these are kind of simple, straightforward things. So I'm going to blow right through these things. And again, if you guys want to talk more about it afterwards, happy to do this. But make sure you have the right hardware for yourselves, that your software is uniform, and so forth. And then I think that's taking us to the team and new client conferencing. Joe, I don't know if maybe this is you with starting to master your tutorials on YouTube and so forth.
Sure. So it's sort of like what we experienced years and years ago with beta and VHS. When I started doing mediations through video conferencing, Skype seemed to be the thing to use, and I got fairly decent with it. But it seems like anything else, Zoom has become more popular. Law schools are using it, colleges are using it, and so our colleagues are using it. And as a result, choose one major piece of technology that you know what you're doing on, hopefully one that other people are using, because that's going to make it a little easier. I asked Leslie at Steve's office about why they don't use Microsoft Teams. It seems to work pretty well intra-office as opposed to inter-offices. And the answer is they were already using Zoom, and it just seemed to be the way to go. So I think mastering one, certainly for me, is the way to go.
There we go. So now we I guess this is my ball, which is regular team meetings and work from home productivity. So for many people, I've been talking to a lot of family law attorneys, and they're telling me that, essentially they're kind of out of business, and I don't know how I'm going to, manage my secretaries and my paralegals and all of those people that are doing work for you. And work from home means the end of productivity in my law office. Oh, look at this. I actually can see a chat. I actually see two chats. And now you guys can see the chat. So that's kind of interesting. So I'm going to hold my chats out for a while. So people are saying, well, work from home, does this mean the end of productivity? So for the lawyers, it's pretty easy to manage productivity, right? You just look at billable hours. If they're billing hours, they're productive. If they're doing some kind of social media postings that are going to generate business for them in the future, that may be the way that you're managing productivity. So, but with your legal assistants, not your paralegals so much, but your non-billing legal assistants, it's kind of hard to measure productivity. So a number of people have come up with things. Let's see if maybe just popped out of that screen, so maybe it's not happy. There we go. So I'm going to go back one screen. So one of my friends, Scott Rand, I don't know if you guys know RMO. RMO are probate trust litigation attorneys. He has a thing called Smokeball, and it tells you how many letters got written, how much time each legal assistant spent online, how long they were on the server. And so Scott gets really good detailed reports telling him about the productivity of his support staff. Now, in our particular case, we have kind of different groups of people, right? So we have lawyers, legal assistants and paralegals, and then we have support services. So our support services do the photocopies, filings, file papers and files to the extent that we still have paper files, keep the kitchens clean, and do all the different things that have to be done around the office. Well, obviously, since the office is closed, there's very little work for support services. And so those people are going to be very unproductive right now. But the legal assistants seem to be really booming, and having meetings at 10 o'clock in the morning and then having them again at 3 o'clock in the afternoon gives us a little better read and a closer read without having to do something like Smokeball, where you're monitoring every letter that gets produced by your staff. So Joe, I'm going to kick you over to study sessions and mediations, because you're kind of the king of mediation. You can talk a lot about how that's all working.
Okay. Well, as Steve mentioned regarding having your team meetings, how about virtual happy hours with your colleagues, your friends? Our Better Divorce group down in the South Bay had a meeting. We had more people attend that meeting than we have in person, and I think in the same experience I had with Levitt Quinn. So this is a really good opportunity to just even socialize with people. Some of you may have experienced a virtual Passover last week, or Easter with your family. So these are the things that I think we should continue to do. We're connectors as people, particularly lawyers, and as a result, we still want to stay in touch with people. So think about little events to either host, inter-office or intra-office.
And Joe, do you want to talk about now, or do you want to talk about later about how you've been managing mediations and breakout rooms and so forth? Is that coming later in the presentation?
Yeah, we're going to get to the breakout rooms and the slide 47 that's coming up.
So one of the things, just to put a pin in what Joe said on the virtual happy hours. So I'm class of 1985. I know I look much older than 60, but I'm 61 years old. So I've been doing this stuff for 35 years. And my class has its reunion this year. And of course, all the reunion stuff is all messed up. So I contacted USC Law School and said, hey, let's do a virtual happy hour. So at 5 o'clock tonight, my law school class and I are getting together, and 100 of us are going to get together on this Zoom. And we're going to talk about what's the good old days and what we've been doing. And Leslie Abel in my office is going to be the moderator, and she's going to break us up into little groups, and we're going to have little meetings with 8 or 10 people for like 15 minutes, and then Leslie's going to reshuffle the deck. But from a marketing standpoint, just think about the marketing prestige of that. Now all of my 200 classmates from USC, of which we don't graduate a lot of divorce lawyers anyway, now I'll get the word that Steve Mandel and Jerry Klein, 2 divorce lawyers, are hosting this virtual happy hour, and it just can't be bad for business. So just 2 seconds of thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Okay. So just some quick tips on the things, Joe. I'm going to just rip through them, and you can describe them real quick, because we
Sure.
talked about this all before the meeting started. So Joe, you got the ball.
Right. So, the first few Zooms that I hosted with multiple people, you could hear background noises. So the host has the power. It's kind of a nice thing. You mute people, unmute them, and you can ask for feedback by creating polls at the end. And probably my most useful tool on Zoom, whether it's at the law school or in a mediation, is the breakout rooms, because the host can put people into a room, however many people are part of that breakout, and they can communicate together, and the host can go from room to room. So if it's just a small mediation or in a collaborative case where we're caucusing privately with our clients, we can be in these rooms, and then the host will either, you could time it where you're back at a certain time, like you say, we're going to for 10 minutes and then I'll come back together, and the host can go back and forth from room to room, and then ultimately put everybody back in the same room.
So so if you want to do, if you're doing Zoom in your office, you may want to have your whole office together, and then you might have the 2 people that have to do with billing, or the 3 paralegals, or the 3 attorneys together. And you can break them out into rooms, and you can let them discuss a topic that you think is important, and then you can bring them all back together again. So part of that 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock are doing training for everybody, because we never have enough time to train in the office. It's like the worst thing. And I'm always very critical about the fact that I'm like the worst onboard person in the entire universe. And what I mean by onboarding is when you hire a new employee, how do they figure out the culture of the law firm? How do they get along, and so on and so forth. And even though I seem like I've got that under control, I am the worst at onboarding. And so now that we have these Zoom meetings twice a day, I get 10 or 15 minutes to take a particular issue, and now I can present that to the whole group and we can discuss it, not anything complicated. And we're actually moving the ball forward. And then like yesterday, we broke the lawyers off into a study group, and then we did the paralegals and legal assistants in another group to talk about how to utilize Zoom to help the lawyers, because the lawyers are having so much trouble. They don't usually edit their documents as well and those types of things. And now through Zoom, through your screen sharing, Joe could take control of my computer, I could take control of Joe's computer. And so we worked with the legal assistants and paralegals on that day so that they could help the attorneys to be more productive. And that brings us to the screen sharing. I'll do one last thing on screen sharing here. For years, if any of you have ever worked with me on anything, you know that I'm the king of screen sharing. So a couple years ago, Chris Melcher and I had a really complicated judgment that we had to draft. The parties had agreed on everything, but we had to draft the judgment. And it had multiple layers of stock and stock options and restricted stock and restricted stock options and all kinds of craziness. And every word mattered. And so we could have done that judgment by me making it a set of revisions and then emailing them to Chris. And then Chris making a set of revisions and emailing them back to me. And then me making some revisions and emailing back to Chris. And that wouldn't have been very effective for that. It would have taken days to do it. The more effective way to do it was for Chris and I and the two forensics accountants and the clients to get on a Zoom and share the screen and just go paragraph by paragraph through the document, making sure that it said what everybody wanted it to say. And it took hours and hours and hours, as you can imagine. There was a lot of money involved in the case, so it was worthwhile. But we got a document that's now understandable. And so being able to screen share, like you guys seeing my screen, and if I was to give, let's say, Marshall control of the computer right now, I could give Marshall control of my computer and he could dance around and he could do whatever he wanted in my computer. Makes it much more simple and quick and efficient. So Zoom, Joe, maybe you want to rip through some of these real quick?
Yeah, really quickly. Bottom line is that you've got an opportunity now too to control the environment, and you can imagine in whether it's high conflict cases where you're working with people. This is an opportunity now where you're not in the same room. There could be restraining order issues, and power imbalances or whatever. But being able to control these kinds of tools really helps in that regard. Especially, you're actually literally keeping people apart. So it's a safer environment, actually.
And hopefully you guys have learned now. There were probably about 60 people online when we went through how to mute yourself, how to turn your video on, how to turn your video off, how to raise your hand, how to use the chat features. And when we get finished with this, we're going to go and show you gallery view. You can also try right now split screen view or shared screen view, I guess, which is up in the top. And you could put the PowerPoint presentation on one side and the gallery on the other, and there's a line that's kind of going through the middle. You might not be able to see it. You can make either side bigger or smaller if you wanted to. Something that we didn't talk about, which is speaker view. So when you've got a lot of people on the Zoom, you have 10 people on the Zoom, and you want to only hear the speaker. You don't want to hear the other people. Then if you go into the picture of the person who you want to see, you can hit, there's 3 little dots and you can hit it, you can pin the video. So like my video will always be there, or you could be in speaker view where only the loudest person is being heard at any given time. So kind of a interesting thing. And then of course, we were toying around with virtual backgrounds. This is me in my office virtually. There you go. I thought it's the next one where my t-shirt thing comes up, I guess. Okay, Joe, so it's all you with managing Zoom functions. Okay, well,
one of the things that is a little scary are the Zoom bombers. You may have heard about that. That's where you're in a meeting and and someone shows up, very, very concerned about it because there was a student at Gonzaga, or somebody bombed a classroom at Gonzaga, and they were, walking around naked while their, instructor was teaching. But if it's not Zoom bombing, one of the things to be careful about is while you're sitting there, you forget that you're on video, okay? And that's not going to make for a productive environment if you're giving a talk, or if you're teaching a class, or if you're just working with your colleagues. So there are some protocols for Zoom, looking in the camera at a level. Be careful about your appearance as you're doing it. Steve and I up pretty much as if we were having a meeting with a client. If I'm in a mediation, I'd probably wear a jacket and a shirt. Steve mentioned that he likes no jacket and maybe a tie, and so that kind of ability to be able to feel that you're in the same kind of environment, even though you're working from home, is certainly something to do, and Zoom helps with that.
And from a management standpoint, for managing your law firms, how do you monitor productivity? Well, you can have Zoom conferences with everybody to talk to them about what they're doing and keeping up with them. You can monitor your workflow. You can have very large team meetings. I mean, we have anywhere from 35 to 40 people on our twice a day Zoom meetings. And then, with the Zoom bombing happens, by the way, not because somebody has figured out how to intercept your Zoom. The Zoom bombing happens because you're doing repetitive meetings using the same Zoom account regularly. So, if every time you have a meeting, you have a new Zoom account, Zoom room number essentially, then meeting number, then you're not going to have too much trouble with bombing. And to me, the biggest management thing is the importance of my communication and collaboration within the office, and of course, keeping up with my Hawaiian shirt of the day, right? So you have to do that. I now know what Colbert and any of the late night hosts, Kimmel and all of those guys, because since I can't see you guys now because I'm in full screen sharing mode, I can't judge you guys' reactions to my stupid jokes. So that's an interesting little comment.
That really is the challenge when you're actually speaking. For my first Zoom class, there were 80 students, and I'm conducting my class, and I feel like I'm just bombing. I feel like a comedian that isn't getting any comments. And then I realized, my God, these people are on mute. So just keep in mind that there's some limitations to it, but it's fun.
Okay, so now, so that was talking about just functioning in your work from home environment. And that's like how we get along, how we're going to get through this. But my big goal is not just to get through this. I want to get through this and I want to gain market share. And what do I mean by that? Well, in my opinion, there's always a glass ceiling that's holding me back. And everybody has a glass ceiling that holds them back. And right now, there are cracks in the glass ceiling. And so we can all crawl through those little cracks. So now the key is, how do we, if our goal is to be bigger, stronger, better, make more money, have a better practice, whatever your goals are, make sure you understand your goals, set your goals. But once you set your goals, then let's start talking about how we're going to obtain gaining market share. And we got about 15 minutes before we open it up to questions and answers. So we're going to kind of go through some of these things. Joe, you want to hit the first one?
Sure. Letting the public know you're still open for business. Right after we were told to stay home, we put footers on our emails saying that although we're not having in-person meetings, we're still available by teleconference. And also, importantly, I think, is the phones. You can have, we have our receptionist who was able, an office manager was able to take the main brains of the phone home with her. which maybe she is already, but in any event, she took the phone. And so you dial my work phone number, you have somebody who answers the phone. You don't have to have an in-house person do it. There's some lawyer.com. There's an affiliate called Lawyer Line. They have live people answering phones, and it can even take credit cards over the phone. Obviously, you have to talk to your clients, make sure that they understand that that's what you're doing. But still, conducting as much business as you can, like you used to. But I think answering telephones is an important feature.
Yeah, we've kind of flipped that a little bit at FMBK. We've gone to the auto answer. Unfortunately, for many of you, again, this is a technology issue. If you have voice over IP phones, you guys are in heaven right now, right? Because you're sitting at home. The phone rings in your office. It rings on your cell phone. It rings on your home phone. It'll ring wherever you tell it to ring. We don't have, well, we have voice over IP, but the way the voice over IP works is not really conducive to being able to transfer calls and do a bunch of stuff that we want to be able to do. So our voice over IP is not as good as just going through the voice maze. So we left our voice maze on. One of the things that we didn't do that we thought about doing, we debated it, was to change our outgoing message on our voicemail. Like the voicemail now says, you've reached the offices of FMBK. If you know your party's extension, dial it now. If you don't, hit 0 and you get our voice cue, right? And we were going to change it to, welcome to FMBK. Yes, we're still open and doing business. And if you know your attorney's extension or the paralegal's extension, call it now. And we were going to put the paralegal and legal assistance extension on the website so people would know which legal assistants are tied to which attorneys. And then, make some different outgoing message. Ultimately, we decided not to do that. I don't know if that's a good decision or a bad decision, but so a couple things you might want to look at are with your telephones, the way they're answered, whether or not you have voice over IP, so you're able to shift the phones to your home phones and so forth, and also whether or not you want to change your outgoing public message. And what are you and your attorneys going to do with your downtime, right? So, Joe?
Yeah, this is, I've always felt, oh gosh, I'm too busy. I've got a website. Sometimes I look at some organization that I'm involved in and I find out that, it's a super old picture or something I did years ago that I don't do anymore. And I don't know why I say that it's on my, my profile. So revamping your website, excellent opportunity to go through your material and things that you just have no time for. Get rid of, most of us are actually pretty active and we're doing things and start updating the things that you're currently doing.
So, and learning some technology and unused features. Like we have a very sophisticated database management system. We call it CRM, right? Contact Relationship Management Software, CRM software. And even at my level, and I consider myself really pretty good with technology. I usually stay right up. I'm probably using 20% of the capabilities of our CRM software. So, that would be something I'd want to do. The other thing I'd want to do is I'd want to take a look at my marketing strategy. And I think all of us have the same gut instinct, which is to cut back right now and tighten up. And I can just tell everybody from having managed through the 2000 financial issues and the 2008 through 2011 financial issues, instead of contracting, I want to expand. And so during 2000 and 2008 through 2011, we expanded our marketing budgets. And that turned out to be very useful because we had our best years in the history of the firm were during those times. So I think, you want to rethink your budget, but don't do useless cuts, right? Like if your receptionist is costing you $25,000 a year, but he or she is relying on that money to survive, are you really saving yourself any money by cutting the receptionist? Or are you better off doing what Joe said, which is just forward your calls to the receptionist? And yes, the receptionist, he'll answer 2 calls a day or 4 calls a day, but at the end of the day, you know, if once we come back to our offices and now you got to go hire a new receptionist for the $3,000 or $4,000 that you saved, how much time is it going to take you now to rehire the receptionist who knew all the clients, who knew all the attorneys, who was doing a really good job? So just be careful about your budget. So rethink your budgets, but be very careful about useless costs. In addition to that, I will tell everybody, Peter Walzer and I had a really good conversation about cutting attorneys because a lot of people have a gut instinct to cut attorneys now. And Peter and I were talking about the fact Peter actually stole one of my favorite attorneys from our office. And I was very upset about that at the time. But that cost Peter thousands of dollars just in his time and the cost for the headhunter to go attract this person. And so now because the market shrinks, Peter starts letting go of his attorneys. When the market expands again, which it will, then he'll have to go and have all those expenses again. So when you're rethinking your budget, your marketing and your staff budgets, be very careful about what cuts you make today, because you might be penny wise and pound foolish. Hence the reason why, at least between now and July 1, we made a commitment through July 1 that we won't be furloughing. But after July 1, if we're still locked out of the office, we may have to rethink that a little bit.
Not only will we hopefully get that money back if they can refund the SBA, we also, going back to the earlier slides regarding respect, trustworthiness, leadership, because if they see you being loyal to them at this critical time when millions of people are out of jobs, I think you're going to be keeping your staff and lawyers.
There you go. And so if you want to gain market share, you got to stay top of mind, right? And so one of the big things, so Joe and I are the quintessential opposites of each other right now. You see me all over social media. You see me on TV. You see me here. You see me there. I'm writing articles. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm all over the place, right? And yes, it is very true that when the turtle sticks his neck outside of the shell, sometimes it gets chopped off, right? And that happens to me, and it's embarrassing and it's not fun. But the key right now is to stay top of mind. So one of the things that, and then I'll let Joe talk about this for a second because he's got kind of the opposite side of it. But one of the things that I talked to Leslie Abel, our marketing coordinator at FMBK, about is I want every attorney in the office to right now spend the time, go through their profile on our line, go through their LinkedIn profile, take a look at their Facebook pictures, and then at least once a week, post something positive that they did towards the practice of family law. I attended a seminar. I filed a motion. I did something that's positive to show that they're active and they're working and they're making money as a family law lawyer. Because at the end of the day, our referral sources, which are primarily other attorneys, want to do business with busy people. And so if you can show that even during this situation, you are able to stay busy, in my opinion, that will result, it won't necessarily result in business today, but in October, November, December, January, you're going to see business coming in. And I'll turf it back to you, Joe.
Well, Steve reminds me often that me not being on Facebook or LinkedIn just produces more business for his firm, and he says it tongue in cheek, and he asks me to become more active. But we all have to be comfortable with what we do, and I'm working on it, Steve.
And so another way to gain market share right now is to consider alternative fee arrangements. So Joe, you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, sure. The days of just getting a huge retainer and working off of the retainer, I think the back to work is going to be a little different than what's been in the past. I've been working in limited scope area for a long time, and so often clients will pay as they go on a consulting arrangement. But particularly now, when people are calling, I want to be able to give them setting boundaries, but giving them an opportunity to hire me on a very limited scope just to work through mediation or answer some questions that they might have while they're exploring their options. And so, you know, this is where flexibility and also creativity is going to be helpful. Taking credit cards over the phone, you know, things that we used to, or at least I always abhorred doing, wanting, you know, a check or whatever. So just be able to start working with clients, as long as from a risk management standpoint, you make sure that you set those boundaries so the clients know that, no, you didn't hire me for, you know, 1 hour to be your lawyer for the next 3 years.
Correct. And so let me give everybody, just so everybody feels like they got some value out of this, let me give you just a really interesting concept. When this all came down, I talked to a bunch of managing law partners from around the country that manage family law firms. And I said, one of the things I'm going to be looking for is I'm going to be looking to partner up with other law firms, much like Joe does on the collaborative side, and say, okay, look at, when wife comes to me and says, gee, you know, husband and I just broke up. We're living in separate houses, even though the coronavirus, and, you know, husband's making 150 grand a year, wife's making 180 grand a year. We don't have a lot of money for a big battle. So how do we manage this? Because who's going to pay the bills? How do we parent our children? You know, our typical issues, right? So I said, why not do some, you know, with a case like that, why not say, okay, look, we're going to take a fee of $7,500, and for $5,000, we'll prepare your preliminary declaration disclosure. We'll prepare a basic RFO for spousal support, child support, parenting plan, attorney fees, whatever those issues are, but just a basic thing. The other side, the husband will do the same, hire a lawyer for the same money. We'll take $5,000 will be FMDK's fee. $2,500 is going to go to the private arbitrator or judge. And then you take that. So now you've got, we're preparing, and what we would do is we would go to a Zoom hearing, which will not be perfect. It'll be a maximum of 4 hours long, let's say. And so, and the concept would be, we're going to prepare your preliminary declaration disclosure, your RFO for support and fees and parenting plan. We're going to attend a 4-hour hearing with a private judge with limited testimony, obviously. And within 72 hours, the private judge will agree to render a decision. And that's going to be basically your decision until the courts reopen. Now, that's not going to be the 20% of the psycho wacko cases on the top, and it's not going to be the 20% of the cases on the bottom, but it's going to be 60% of the cases in the middle. And that's something that everybody can put on a credit card, and then they're stable until the world comes back again. So those are the kind of ways that as family law lawyers, we have to start thinking. So,
yeah,
Joe, let me let you kind of rip through some of these.
Well, I want to get to the our 10 takeaways. We've got about 5 minutes left, but one of the things, and I'm happy to provide some information on this, but you know, we've got to be concerned about privacy, right? So on your Zoom calls, you know, agreements that there's going to be no recording of your mediation or your you know, your CDR kind of work, or whatever you're doing, and third parties being present. How do you know that while you're talking, there's somebody trying to coach you, you know, your spouse? So there's got to be some limitation set on them, and I think there's a protocol to be established for these Zoom meetings is important.
Okay, so all of these kind of things about, you know, your market share and, you know, completing your PDDs and making settlement offers, these are all ways that we can make money while the courts are closed. And we all know these kind of things. Joe and I just thought we'd kind of throw them out there so people can see them. And by the way, if you want a copy of these slides, just send an email to me or Leslie, and we're perfectly happy to send you a copy of the slides. And like Joe said, you know, some issues with the Zoom meetings that everybody wants to make sure that we're, you know, that you're not recording the meetings and so on and so forth. So now we get to our top 10 takeaways. And when we finish these, then we're going to stop the screen share. We're going to go back to gallery view, and Joe and I'll hang out for another half an hour because we still have 100 people watching the presentation today, and we'll answer some questions. So there we go with our top 10 takeaways. So my very first one was letting everybody know that you're open for business. And Joe?
Yeah, the only way you can practice strong leadership is to know what's going on. So make sure that you're getting daily reports from, I think David Yamamoto and the courts are providing us often with what's updates on the court status, but we got to know what's going on there. We got to know what's going on in our county and our state.
And my mantra, and you can say, okay, Steve Mandel is just that managing partner that the office is in the middle of an earthquake and it's falling over and he's whistling down telling everybody it's going to be okay. But my mantra is well-managed and efficient family law firms are going to come out stronger with bigger market shares. And those cracks in the ceiling, the firms that everybody hates to go against because you say, oh my God, they're just too big and they're too powerful and they got too much money. Those firms, there are little cracks in there now, and we're going to be able to get through and pick up those clients if we're smart.
Have a backup plan. Okay, God forbid one of you gets sick, or your spouse or your loved one, significant other. What's going to happen? So have someone available, especially if the solo practitioners need to reach out to colleagues to say, hey, if something happens, would you keep an eye on things for me? And IT, I need it more than most people. So really have somebody on call, whether it's a millennial or whether you pay somebody that you pay as you go, but have that person available. It's not a question of if your computer is going to crash, it's when.
And then balancing managing versus cyber spying. What do I mean by that? Balance how you monitor your work from home people and versus cyber spying. Like I have friends of mine who can tell every email that every person in their office sends at any time, and they're reading them all, and they're doing all these things. Somewhere in there, it's like cyber spying. It would make me crazy if I was an employee. So balance how you manage your employees versus whether or not you're, spying on them.
Yeah, and protecting your firm culture. Find out if your colleagues need a PPE or if there's other supplies, that they're not able to get, and trade. Just continue to build on the trustworthiness, respect that we're looking for.
Okay. And keep in touch with your referral sources. Oh my goodness, right now, it's like you have nothing but time. They have nothing but time. If you're anything like me, at least 75% of my business comes from other lawyers. And we all know that the corporate lawyers, the civil litigation lawyers that send us all this business, they got nothing to do. Pick up the phone, call them, have a Zoom happy hour with 10 of them, whatever. Be the person that gets everybody together and gains market share.
We talked about the limited scope representation and all, but I want to get to what I think is an important one. As I mentioned, I'm sorry. Be flexible with paying as you go, but analyzing your collections, I see that as the 10th one. You really shouldn't be. Take a look at what you're owed and see, are you at 85% of your collections? If you're not there, then you really need to work on that, because now more than ever you need to get paid.
One thing that I'll say about collections, I am not the guy that collects 100% of his receivables. So and the reason why is because if you don't have some loss, you're not taking enough risk. And right now there's a lot of risky cases out there. And I'm not saying bring in a bunch of junky cases, which are going to cost you a lot of money next year, because you bring them in now, you get a small retainer now, but then they can cost you in the end of the day. Because just remember, once you sign on to a case, you ain't getting out of the case, because the last motion that any court's going to hear is going to be a motion for withdrawal. Your motion to withdraw from a case is going to be the last thing that any judge wants to hear. And then I threw on here review and revise your budgets. Whatever your budget was, you can just tear it up, throw it out, get a new one. So review and revise it, but don't be penny wise and pound foolish. So Joe, at this point, I'm going to stop the screen share because we have a boatload of questions, which I kept seeing them coming in, but I just didn't get a chance to take a look at them. So if you've got any one of the questions that you want to address first, go ahead and hit it. Otherwise, I'll try to track one down here for people.
I've been trying as we've gone along to answer a few questions.
Okay. Well, I see a lot of Steve and Joe. You guys rock. JB Rizzo posted something in here asking me to whether or not it's effective to use our our employees' PTO. Yeah, you know, we're burning a lot of PTO right now. PTO is paid time off. So I don't know about you guys, but our attorneys don't get any vacation time. They have a billable hour requirement. So if they can bill their hours and take 6 weeks of vacation, knock themselves out. So we don't have PTO related to vacation time for the attorneys, but certainly for the staff. And so for some of our staff, we are requiring them to burn some of the PTO, but not a lot of it, because we also don't want them to come into the office if they catch the flu. So I don't know if Joe, if you've had any of those kind of discussions.
Yeah, go ahead.
And Deborah, but I'm not sure Deborah who, asked whether or not we need an enhanced version of Zoom to be allowed to use breakout rooms. And
We
Joe,
got that, Steve, that we answered that question. No, you don't need an enhanced version, and someone was kind enough to post a link so that it's a bit of a tutorial on how to get into breakout rooms.
there you go. And the answer is no. Breakout rooms are easy to use. Well, I assume you have to have a paid version of Zoom to have breakout rooms, but the paid version, just so everybody knows, it's like $15 a month. It's not a tremendous amount of money. And then, Joe, somebody asked, do any of the mediators have guideline rules for mediation via Zoom? In other words, is there anything printed that you could refer people to?
I have some that I've seen, and if anybody wants to email me, I'm happy to provide some protocols. My email address is joe@mcgs-law.com.
And then somebody pointed out that, Allison Spirito pointed out that the Zoom the free Zoom is only good for 40 minutes at a time. So every 40 minutes, you got to go in and reboot it. But right now, I hear rumors. I think we have 4 Zoom accounts. Leslie can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have 4 Zoom accounts for 20 attorneys, and we just kind of share them. And then for short conferences, we just use the free Zoom because it's usually between an attorney and a legal assistant, or an attorney and maybe the legal assistant and a client. And usually the meetings are 15, 20, 30 minutes long. Clients love us right now because the clients in Pasadena don't have to drive at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to West LA just to actually see you because, they want to see you. So that's the difference between the free Zoom. But for $15 a month, I think that we can probably afford the regular Zoom, to pay for Zoom. Joe, there was another question about breakout rooms, which I think you got. JB likes my jokes. That's good. And somebody pointed out something really interesting. Michael Burt pointed out that the speakers are not using headphones. And so this is kind of interesting. So I bought a basic Logitech HD camera, which came with a built-in microphone. And it's about, I don't know, how far. I can reach it, so it's probably, 3 feet away from me? And that's what I'm using, is just a basic Logitech HD microphone. So I don't know, it seems to work pretty well. Joe, your internet kind of, you and I have talked about your internet's not so great at the beach.
Because it was a work from home presentation, I thought it would be disingenuous to show up at my office, and it's so close. And I've got a small office, so there's not going to be other people there. But yes, my internet at home, and that's something to deal with when you're working from home, is having good sound quality and all. So it's a work in progress for me too.
But I'll tell you what, I would take bad internet and living at the beach over great internet and living in Culver City. But whatever it is. So okay, so that's that. And Marshall Waller posted to everybody a good microphone. And if you guys don't know, Marshall is actually a professional artist, singer. and musician. And so Marshall knows microphones. So I would definitely trust Marshall's opinion. And if you haven't heard Marshall and Mary Ellen's daughter, Marshall is proud to send you links to when they're playing, when they start playing again, and probably some online music that she has, which you could also listen to. And then somebody asked me, what's my CRM software? So I use Time Matters. Time Matters is a Juris product. It used to be a standalone product. I was probably the beta test user for Time Matters. And for the first 20 years of my practice, I got my Time Matters for free, actually. And then Juris bought what is it? Thomson Reuters? No, it's not Thomson Reuters, the other people. Lexus bought Juris, Juris, and they also bought Time Matters. And when they did that, they connected the two, and then they said, oh, Mr. Mandel, you know that your Time Matters has been free. We don't actually need a beta test center anymore. So now we're just going to charge you ridiculous amounts of money for your Time Matters, which you are waist deep in. So now I don't get Time Matters for free. So I use Time Matters. I like it. There's a lot of CRM software that's really good out there. I just once you get invested in something, you're not really happy. When we moved from time slips to Juris, the conversion was around $40,000, and it would have been $80,000 had we not had Time Matters. So just to give you an idea, that conversion is really expensive. So if you're going into CRM software for the first time, highly recommend that you spend a lot of time picking really good CRM software, because if you get the wrong stuff when you have to move it to the new stuff, it's really expensive.
Amy Stallings asked a question about expanding the scope of our expense reimbursements for employees that are working from home. The internet service, phone service, whatever. And it's a good question. If you can afford to pay it, absolutely, because you're gonna get your money back with them being productive. The other thing is that after this is all said and done, there might be more working from home for employees. I know from a personal standpoint that I would feel more flexible in allowing people to take a day and work from home, because we're seeing it in action now.
Yeah. Most of the managing partners that I talk to are really kind of thrilled about this kind of giant work from home test, in terms of because it is something that's on the horizon. I don't know about the rest of you, but our office is in West LA. We are essentially on the Santa Monica, West LA border on Wilshire and Bundy. And virtually all of our staff live in Culver City, Inglewood, Long Beach, Santa Clarita, Valencia. And those people are not going to commute in for the rest of their lives. And so if you want to keep them, we need to come up with alternatives for them. And this was a great test, and people are proving that they can work from home and do it effectively and be productive. So from my standpoint, I kind of like the work from home options, not every day. And I think even in our team meetings, Leslie has arranged a happy hour. We have a happy hour every Friday at 4:00, Leslie. And so during that happy hour, most of the comments are, I can't wait till I can get back into the office. Because working from home is not particularly convenient for everybody, especially legal assistants, because you need foot pedals for your dictations, and it's just not great. And this morning I was on a Zoom conference with my provisors group, and a lot of you are in provisors. And one of the guys was sitting there the whole time like this. And so I sent him a private message saying, hey, PJ, you're looking very thoughtful. And he sent me a private message back saying, no, I'm just trying to stay focused on the meeting, because I have 2 kids that are just slightly out of the picture, and they're screaming and yelling and throwing things. And so I can't stay focused. And so it's everything I can do to stay focused on listening to the meeting. So that was that. So let's see. Any other big questions? Anybody want to raise their hand with any questions? Anybody want to pop out and talk to the whole group as a whole? I think we have about 60 people left, so it's kind of a manageable group now. So if anybody, okay. So the Law Collaborative, that would be Mr. Supancic, I would guess. Did you know that you could change your name to Ron Supancic, or you could say the Law Collaborative? So we'll let you, and by the way, if everybody doesn't know this, Ron is also a graduate of SC, as well as Dennis Wasser, Sorrel Trope, and Ron Rosenfeld. So without further ado, Mr. Sabancic.
Thank you, Steve. This has been wonderful. I had a crisis come up in my practice. Thank God it's one of my few remaining billable clients, so I joined this late. And my question is, are you paying all your lawyers full time? Have you decided on some kind of furlough? What is your office doing? What are other offices doing regarding employees?
Okay, so I'll be very transparent with this group. At FMBK, we did a firm-wide 24% payroll reduction. And why did we make it 24%? Well, when the PPP numbers came out, it said 25%. We didn't know 25% or above or 25% or below. So we made a 24% overall pay reduction across the board for all salaried employees. At FMBK, we're slightly different because we pay all of our attorneys like we pay partners, and everybody's on the exact same system with the exception of lawyers that have been with us for less than 3 years. And the lawyers that have been with us for more than 3 years get paid just like the partners do. They get a percentage of what they bring into the firm based on collection, and they get a percentage of what their billings are based on their billings. And so for those attorneys, since they're on production, we didn't have to do anything, but the salaried employees received a 24% reduction. And Joe, how about you guys?
Well, we started, we had a meeting last week, and we're going to implement a 20% reduction across the board, partners, staff, during the next pay period. And hopefully we can limit it to that until we get a PPP.
And then just to kind of answer your broader question is, what have I heard across the board? I'm in a couple managing law partners groups, and I collaborate with a lot of managing partners from across the country, and it is really a mixed bag out there. The firms that are highly profitable, they're just continuing to pay. The firms that are more normal, like family law attorneys, they're all doing either payroll reductions or furloughing employees. And just remember, when you furlough your employee, they're going to get $400 a week from unemployment insurance. And as long as the feds keep the $600 bonus, they'll get some percentage of that based on what their income is. So if you take a $150,000 an hour, $150,000 a year attorney, and you furlough them, they are going to really get beaten bad on unemployment. It's just not going to be a pretty sight.
Not only that, but then you will not be eligible to get that money back from the government with the PPP.
Yeah, you're going to cause complications with your PPP. But I can tell you, through the family law bar, it's a mixed bag. I've heard a lot of firms moving to production-based for their attorneys and giving some kind of general firm-wide pay reduction that Joe did. We're probably going to reevaluate our pay reduction, and we may reduce that. But I don't know. We have to wait and just see how receivables collect. Quite honestly, I've been budgeting that the attorneys will bill about 60% of what they bill over the course of the year, and that in the short term, we will collect about 60% of the billings. So that means, at the end of the day, you're going to try to manage the firm on about 40 to 50% of the revenues that you had the previous year. That's a really tough cookie. Any other hands? If you've got your physical hand up, I may not see it. So electronic hands are great. Well, Joe, I think, it's 1:16. We did a pretty good job here. Mary Ellen Waller has a hand up. So that's a good thing. Mary Ellen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for doing this. This has just been wonderful. I did want to give one tip to everybody when you were talking about how do you put the word out there that you are open and available. Take advantage of your Google My Business page. And if you do not already have a Google My Business page, grab it and claim it, because it's just as important as your website. And you should have, Google has a lot of, I don't have the links available, but they have a lot of links and information available on how to manage your Google My Business page. So that would be my advice.
And by the way, there's a lot of really good consultants out there that aren't an arm and a leg, right? So Lisa Elkins, who was our marketing coordinator, now her name's Lisa Montauk or something. I think her marketing company is Lisa PR. Lisa's great. She's inexpensive. She works on a contract basis. And, you know, she ran our marketing. She was our first marketing coordinator a long, long time ago and ran our office for 4 years. And so she's very familiar with how to run a family law practice and how to develop marketing for them. But Mary Ellen, that's a hot tip, because how many of you have gone to Google the business and it says closed? Like Google the Staples Center and it'll say temporarily closed. So make sure that if you Google your website, it doesn't say temporarily closed, right? You know, if you on the Google page. So let's see. So I give you a quick sweep. Okay, quick sweep of everybody. I don't see any other hands. So I want to thank the LA County Bar for letting Joe and I do this. And thank everybody for participating. Joe, I think you should have, and of course, thank Leslie and Allison. I don't know who else I missed, Joe. So if I've embarrassed myself by missing somebody incredibly important, I'll give you the ball to say the last word.
You know, just appreciate all of you attending. I too, like Steve, was thinking that we would have 100 people on this presentation, and I can see my phone from people who are indicating that they weren't able to get in. So I don't know if the bar is going to repeat this and has, you know, because they did record it, but it might be useful because I've already noticed that there's about 30 people who could not get in.
I took a look on my email, and there's a lot of on the listserv, a lot of activity on the listserv of people who wanted to get in on this.
Yeah, the entire meeting's been recorded. It'll be sent out and posted on the LACBA website.
Great.
Hey, that makes me pretty happy. Like, who knew that somebody wanted to listen to Joe and I? Like, you know, like, Joe, really?
Well, the bar, this is a lesson for the bar too. I know Araceli, our executive director's on, it might be worthwhile for the bar to get to 1,000 for their Zooms. Because if it is popular, you know, you'd want to be able to reach out to more than 100 people.
Okay, so the final word is going to go to David Yamamoto, who is our chair right now. And David, you're going to have Joe had the final word, but you're going to have the final word.
Is that because I popped up all of a sudden? Yeah, no, I just want to say thank you guys for doing a wonderful job. It was just as good as our program last week. And Steve or Leslie, you guys did tape it. If you did tape it, Araceli will be asking for it, and it will be archived and put on the LACBA website for the 30 people that didn't get to see it, and for anybody else that wants to see it again. But I just want to let you know we're going to have more capacity next week because our family wizard is going to host it on Zoom. So I think they can get up to 500 people on that. So anyways, I just want to thank you guys. Thank everybody for attending. And hopefully the LA County Bar will become more relevant and we'll get more members. And I just want to thank Steve, Joe, Araceli, Allison, and Leslie again. All right, let's give them a big hand.
There you go. Now we're going to teach you guys a new thing. If you want to give everybody a big hand, go on the bottom of your screen and you'll see a thing called reaction. And you can give me the thumbs up or you can give me the clap.
I'm going to sign off before that happens.
There you go, guys.